welcome back to the Roundtable. We're taking a break from zombies, and we're taking a break from brackets for this episode in particular, because our esteemed, that's the second time in like 30 seconds that I've said esteemed, so sorry about that, Templar. Our wonderful and amazing Templar 10 is really into BookTok right now. Like, he's been on TikTok a whole lot, and he's just been, I don't know, when I think TikTok, I think Templar 10. And so, Templar, you've been perusing BookTok, haven't you? Is that where this topic came from?
I guess it's BookTube. I guess it would be, because it's been mostly YouTube based, because I purged TikTok
attaboy.
a while ago, but I was on BookTok for a time.
Okay.
But I would say this sort of reading stint has been more BookTube related.
Okay. That's fair. TikTok is still, as of right now, we are recording this on Thursday, April 17th. It is still technically illegal to have TikTok in the United States of America. I'm just putting that out there. Just be warned that is still a thing. You can still download it, sort of, and you can still use it, sort of, but we're still in this like 75-day period where it could happen. So in the kind of into the breach there, we're going to jump headfirst into our own book talk. See what I did there? Book talk. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you. And we're going to make a top 5 list of books we've read in essentially the first part of this year, maybe the first quarter of this year. Templar, you were kind of recounting the fact that you've read a lot of books. You said something like, what, 18, 20, 15 books that you've read so far this year?
I just finished Lord of the Flies, which was the 18th for this year.
What spurred this on? This was kind of going into last year as well, but like, what spurred this on this year for you? Did you set a goal, like you want to read 50 books, 100 books, or was it just kind of like, I need to get more invested in classical literature?
Yeah, it was sort of both of those things. Like last year, I mean, I have stints with reading, like here and there. I'll just get into reading and I'll read a lot for a while, and then I tend to fall off of it. You know, I got into the Dresden Files a couple of years ago, and I read like all 16, 17 books in that series in like a month and a half or something.
Jeez.
And they're all quick reads, but yeah, it was a bit excessive. But I go through stints with it, and then so last year, around end of summer, early fall, I would say, I got into the idea of, I tend to latch on to sort of concepts when it comes to a lot of things, and also when it comes to reading. Like, I've had the idea in the past to go back and read all the Hugo Award-winning novels, or to read all of the like Pulitzer Prize-winning novels, or some like things like that. I haven't gone through with those yet, but I did have the idea, and I was sort of thinking that I hadn't read a lot of the books that are considered sort of classic literature. And I thought, in an effort to sophisticate myself, I suppose, that I would put together a list of sort of classic literature and start building that list up. And so I ended up with a list. I perused various lists online of sort of must-reads, classic novels. I stuck with fiction, and I ended up with about 122, 123, I think, something like that. And so went about trying to acquire them, mostly through used bookstores and that sort of thing, trying to get them out. And I've got all but maybe 10 of them acquired since then. And yeah, I did set the goal this year of reading 50 books. I'm ahead of that pace currently, but I also set it so that, you know, it's a little less than one a week. If I fall behind at various points, or if I get, bogged down in something else, I won't lose it. Also, some of the books I'm interested in reading are fairly long and take me a while to get through. But yeah, I set the goal for 50, and so far I'm ahead of it. It hasn't all been classics. Like, I tend to mix in a lot of sort of palate cleanser stuff, or stuff that's a little bit shorter. Because I finished Dracula. Technically, I started that last year, but I finished it this year, so I'm counting it. And then after that, I wanted to read something lighter or something shorter. So I go back and forth. I don't keep them all to be classics. I feel like I would just burn myself out.
Yes. Yeah, I think you would too. I'm actually looking at, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a top 5 list of the books we've read this year so far. I started to total up. I have, as we'll talk about in a little bit, I've decided to tackle a couple of really big, like 1,200, 1,300 page novels, which probably was not the best for like hey, we're going to do a top 5 in the first quarter of the year. Oh, well. Also, I read a lot of nonfiction for my job as a pastor, and that's just how it works. And so we started putting these lists together. However, I'm looking at the list of Pulitzer Prize winners, and there's some bangers in here, dude. Or Pulitzers for the fiction. I forgot. Like there's some bangers in here. Like Gilead is good. Middlesex, Empire Falls. Independence Day. That's not the movie. Will Smith punching an alien in the face. Welcome to Earth. Beloved. This is a book you should probably read. Beloved is really good. You smiled.
I have heard pretty significantly different opinions about that book.
This is me gaslighting you.
I've heard like there are some people who are very high on Toni Morrison and then I've heard some suggestions that she gets maybe over her work kind of gets inflated because of
Oprah,
other reasons.
Because of Oprah,
yeah, sure, and because of other reasons. So I have Beloved. Actually, I have a copy of it. It is on my list of classics to read. So I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, well, good luck. All right, so let's start with you. Number 5. Where are we headed for number 5 on your list?
Sure. Number 5 was one of those palate cleansers, sort of shorter books for me that I just kind of read in between that I had read in high school and wanted to revisit, which is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck.
Yep.
This was the first book, certainly that I remember, at least, that made me cry. Maybe there was something previous, but I remember I read it in school. I think it was probably grade 9, and I just remember getting to the end and just crying. And it's a very short book. I mean, it's probably borderline novella territory. Like this version I have is 107 pages.
Yep.
So borderline novella, but really excellent, simple story. As you might imagine, there's not a ton of time to have a lot of complexity. Just about a friendship of these two guys. And their adventure, them trying to survive the sort of dreams that they have of finding something better for themselves in, I want to say 20s or 30s.
Yeah, it's the 30s. It's the Great Depression, yeah. Great
Depression era United States. And I mean, the end is pretty heartbreaking, but just the story of Lenny and George, it's really a pretty beautiful book. And I think it is just a nice look at what a sort of male friendship can be. I think it's very sweet in a lot of parts. I think it deals with some difficult topics about, mental illness or sort of disabilities in a way that I think that holds up relatively well for a book as old as it is. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful story in some ways. It's a very tough story in some ways. Presents sort of the desperation of the time and also the dreams of the people in it. So I found it quite moving even now. So I would recommend it to anyone who hasn't checked it out. I mean, maybe it's one a lot of people have read in the school. If you have, maybe revisit it. If you haven't, check it out. Like, I think if you have a Kindle, it's like $1 or might even be one of their free kind of classic collection stuff. So it's not hard to find. It's a very short read. Depending on how fast you read, you could do it in one sitting. Some people. So, Of Mice and Men, I highly recommend it. I had a really nice time with it.
Did you ever read Grapes of Wrath or Cannery Row or anything? Any other Steinbeck?
No, I do have East of Eden here.
East of Eden is interesting. Have you read it or have you not gotten there yet?
No, it's just it was just another one on the list of classics that I put together. Grapes of Wrath I don't have. That's the one. That's one of the few of those 10 that I haven't been able to find a used copy of it. So
okay. Grapes. Grapes is what it is. But after you read East of Eden, I'd be interested to talk to you. It's been about 20 years since I've read East of Eden, but it was striking in its the way it portrays religious views, and that's all I'm going to say about that. There is very much like a new Adam populating the earth type of feeling to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Which that's again east of Eden. If you think about Cain and Abel, Cain got sent east of Eden, and yada yada yada. It's again, Steinbeck is obviously he's revered for a lot of reasons. Also, last question for me. We can't do this on every book that we do, but last question for me. How do you feel about George?
He seems like a real person. Like he, how do I feel about him?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say I generally like the character. I mean, he does some things and he treats Lenny sometimes in some ways that you wouldn't necessarily say is particularly positive, but I think it's a somewhat realistic portrayal of like a fairly hard guy who has taken on a sort of burden that he's doing his best to sort of carry, and sometimes it kind of is too much for him and he lashes out. But I think there's a real sort of genuine compassion and sort of care there for George that or just care for Lenny that George shows, that I think he feels like a real person to me dealing with. He's not sort of supernaturally kind in a way that like might feel maybe not unrealistic, but certainly very difficult, especially given their circumstances. But he's not a kind of cruel, like only putting up with Lenny because of, you know, some obligation. I think there's like kind of a mix in there that is interesting and felt pretty real to me.
Okay. George is very mixed. I think everything I've ever read, and even in my own, I've only read it once or twice, but every time I've read it and even thought about George, I get a weird feeling about him, because simultaneously, like, I feel like he's kind of a jerk, and also he's kind of a big brother to Lenny. And so you're right. It feels very real. Well, whatever. We don't need to litigate a book from 1937. I mean,
he's going to do things in the story that you're not going to like in terms of his treatment of Lenny. And he's going to do some things that you're going to find sweet. And he's going to do some things that are necessary. And I'll leave it at that.
That's foreboding. Let's leave it there. All right, my number 5. This again is me taking hold on, I'm gonna pause here because I need to pull up my list here, and anytime I flash to this page it goes to that, and so that's not what I need. I need this. Okay, I'm gonna put a cut right here. Okay. All right. On that note, it's time for me to go my number 5. Now, this is one of the issues that I came up with at the beginning of the year, actually towards the end of last year, in December of last year, so 2024. A guy called Brandon Sanderson released another book called Wind and Truth. Now, perhaps you've heard of Brandon Sanderson. He writes all of the words in the English language ever and puts them in all of the pages that he can. For example, I'm currently in the middle of a Brandon Sanderson book called Rhythm of War. It's book 4 in the Stormlight Archive, and it's this big. So in reference, what is that? That's Of Mice and Men. This is 1,300. How many pages is this? 1,225 pages. 1,225 pages.
Basically a novella. Same thing.
It's a novella if novellas were the size of War and Peace. So it is literally 12 of Mice and Men. So just go with me here, ladies and gentlemen. The Brandon Sanderson. So with Wind and Truth, I devoted myself to all right, I need to go back through these. It had been a number of years since I've read them. I want to read Wind and Truth. And so I dove back in and I got to the end of kind of the beginning of the beginning of the series at the end of last year. And so I finished up The Way of Kings. Congratulations to me. And my number 5 book this year that I finally finished up at the end of January is Words of Radiance. Words of Radiance, if you've never read any Brandon Sanderson stuff, the worlds he has created, I'm not going to wax poetic about anything that Sanderson does, because from what I've seen, he can be kind of divisive in the way he handles fantasy. I personally appreciate it. I personally appreciate the the universe called the Cosmere, where there are different books. There's the Mistborn trilogy, and there's some other stuff happening, and then there's all of the Words of Radiance or the Stormlight Archive stuff happening on a different world, and they're all connected, and they all have through lines into them, and it's very big, and it's very galaxy brain type stuff. What I like about Words of Radiance in particular, and what I like about the Stormlight Archives in particular, is that they treat magic differently. So it's not just like some people are born with it, some people aren't. There's a kind of a triune planar system that works, and then there's these like entities called Spren that like are part of this one thing, and whatever, it is a long thing, but the Spren can attach themselves to people in a different realm, and then those people are imbued, but then there's some other, obviously there's the world ending war that's always happening, because that's every fantasy book ever. But the way Sanderson does it, he doesn't get graphic. There's no like sex scenes, there's nothing lewd, like it's not one of those type of fantasy books where it's like Game of Thrones. It's very sanitized, but in a way that feels very different, and I appreciate the way Sanderson writes. And Words of Radiance is the story of this guy Kaladin who he's got history, he's got some stuff going on in his past that you slowly start to unfurl, and the way he does callbacks and the way he does flashbacks in the middle of the entire story is very well done, very tasteful. You don't just sit 15 pages in a flashback and then zip forward and then zip back. It's not that. We're not trying to memento this or anything. Instead, what we are trying to do is, it's very much like some part of the actual story narrative will push forward, and then we'll explain why it happened with a flashback. And that it's very cool. All that being said, like, highly recommend, if you get 6 months out of your year and figure that you want to read a Brandon Sanderson book, God bless you, go for Words of Radiance. That's my pitch there.
I'll run this by you. Since the two main, sort of 2.5 main criticisms I've heard of Sanderson are this: one, that he's very hand-holdy with his writing, that he tends to like kind of over explain things many times to you, and he really wants to hold your hand about it. And the other one being that the Cosmere was sort of a bad idea, and this sort of desire to have everything tied together is like maybe a bit unwieldy and kind of like too much and doesn't really totally work. Would you agree with those two?
I understand where they come from. Let me address the Cosmere one first. I am of the mind that I like big galaxy brain stuff. I like being able to see threads into other things. That's just, I've always had that. And so nerds on Reddit can, and I am a nerd on Reddit, so I'm allowed to say this, nerds on Reddit can come and say like, this is a bad thing. And I understand why they would say it. My pushback is, it's the guy, this is his job. Like, this is what he does for a living. He just bangs out 1,000-page novels all the time. But B, there is an actual unfolding story. So, for example, in Words of Radiance, and this is no spoiler, but you meet a character who is technically from another part of the Cosmere, and you don't know that until later, when some things are kind of revealed, and it's a very head scratchy moment for the characters in the actual book, as it would be. Like if you had an alien that landed essentially and was like, "Hey, I'm from outside of the Milky Way galaxy," you'd be like, what are you talking about? So there is a little bit of that. But this actually feeds into the first criticism, the hand-holdy thing. He needs to kind of hold your hand in some of that to show you that, hey, this is not all there is. Because I think with fantasy novels, fantasy writers in particular, and this is George R.R. Martin, but this is every major, even Tolkien, everything is self-contained within that thing. Like, this is the end all be all, right? Like, this world, it might be Middle Age, it might be Middle Earth, it might be the Third Age, it might be the Fifth Age, but there is nothing outside of what's happening in the history of this world. Yeah, there might be gods and demons and stuff, but by and large, it's this realm and this realm only. Whereas with the Cosmere, it is very much like a Kanban board, or like very much like red yarn being tied from all sorts of other stories that have to feed in at a certain point. And if you don't from the author get like, hey, by the way, this is like, here's a light, here's a sign pointing to something else, you're going to miss it entirely. And so like, I don't think he's the most brilliant writer ever, but I also, I think if you put out enough stuff, you're eventually going to get pushback. And I think that's just the pushback that has been landing on his plate. So that's how I would answer that.
Sure. Fair enough. I've never read anything by Sanderson, but I can, there's a book that's sort of somewhat related to that, so we can address that when we get there.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go.
Did you have anything else for it?
No. Let's the last little thing, and we can talk about. We're going to talk about Sanderson again. because another one of his books is here. I will say the last criticism people levy against Sanderson is that it's like, why he wrote another part of the Cosmere is actually like kind of like young adult. Well, they're like teen novels, like, you know what I'm talking
Silent
about.
Man and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, yeah. And it's very Hunger Gamesy of him to do that. And people are like, well, why would he do that if he's such a brilliant fantasy writer? Why would he need to write another part of his Cosmere with this young adult type stuff? And the answer is because that's how that part of the Cosmere shakes out. And you don't understand that until you read.
Funny, but okay.
Well, there is that too. It's all about money. All right, what's your number 4 here?
So my number 4 is The Outsiders by S.
Oh, yes, dude. Heck yes.
So it's another classic. So I'm leading with 2 classics here. This was another one I kind of read in between some things. And also it lined up that like a local book club in my area was doing it for their I think January book meetup. And I just happened to find out about it. So picked it up, read it. I wasn't originally into it the first little bit. It didn't really grab me. But as it went on, and it's another book that's not very long. Like this copy is 160 pages.
Yep.
Yeah, 180. Yeah, so 100. This copy, which is a fairly common one, is 180 pages. So it's not very long either. But it really started to grab me in the middle, and then by the end, I was quite into it. It's another sort of story about friendship, about like what ties people together. It's an interesting story in terms of the choices that people make and what the consequences of those are, what kind of person someone is, and how like that's more complicated than it might appear. I guess there's always the judge a book by its cover thing. So, but like I would say it's deeper than that. Like there's more to the analysis there. And although I didn't originally love the characters when the book was first starting, I would say I came to really like them over the course of the book. And when it ended, I think I was pretty attached to most of them in it, even though, again, it's not particularly long. So again, I mean, maybe you read it in school. I didn't. Of Mice and Men, I read in school. The Outsiders, I didn't. So this is the first time reading it. And so again, if you read it in school, maybe try to revisit it if you're not forced to read it. If you didn't like it, maybe you'd like it more now. If you're not forced to read something, usually it goes over better. Or just check it out anyway. I mean, it's an interesting book. I think it's aged pretty well. There's some language in it that is a little dated, but beyond that, overall, I think it's quite good. And the messaging of it, I think, still holds up. And I think the character work is very good, and the relationships it explores, and decision making it explores, and what the consequences of those things are, and how that connects with human nature and how we define ourselves. I think it raises a lot of interesting questions. So yeah, The Outsiders.
Good book. Stay Golden Pony Boy is like the best thing that's ever been said. Have you seen the movie yet?
I started it. I haven't finished it yet, but the cast is ridiculous in the movie.
Yes.
The cast is like absurd when you look at all the actors.
It's nuts, dude. And I mean, it was in the mid or early 80s, but like the amount of like bangers that are in that movie. Matt Dillon, Ralph Macchio, Patrick Swayze, Rob Lowe, and Tom Cruise. And Emilio's in it. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Diane Lane is like Sherry.
Oh, that's right.
So like the main actor is not a particularly big name. Like Matt Dillon is maybe not someone people would know, but like everyone else, and it's made by Francis Ford Coppola. It's like it's such a crazy movie that I didn't even really know anything about. But so yeah, I'm still I need to finish the movie, and it seems like a pretty faithful adaptation of the book. Like the movie does seem to be quite close. So yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but the book I recommend to anyone interested.
Wow. Tom Waits is in it, and Cam Neely, Boston Bruins hockey player Cam Neely. That's pretty cool. There we go. I love that.
The real stars.
Yeah, exactly. And Sofia Coppola, because she's in everything her dad is directed. Well, there you go. The Outsiders, ladies and gentlemen. My number 4. Is that anything else before I shut down there?
No. I think that's good. I waxed poetic enough about it.
My number 4 is actually a non-fiction book. So again, I am a pastor, and this is what I do as my full-time job, but also this is what I do as a calling on the Lord. And back around probably the end of February in our community, myself and a dude named Saint Bear, Zach, in our community, we were talking about this book called A Non-Anxious Presence by Mark Sayers. Now, Mark Sayers is a pastor who took over a church in Portland from another pastor named John Mark Comer. And so it's a book that it's like almost a vision for Christian leaders. The problem that happens in Christianity a lot of times, and especially in today's day and age, is that we are taught to win, to go and win. And continually push and continually like do that. But what that ends up leading to is heartbreak and moral failures, because it's all about getting numbers and getting money and all that other stuff. And what Sayers argues for is the idea of actually looking at Jesus and seeing what Jesus did. And you look at the Bible and you don't see Jesus pushing and winning and trying to get numbers. And in fact, he was like pretty much anti-numbers. Instead, what you see is Jesus becoming a non-anxious presence to those. He's not forcing meetings on people. He's not trying to make sure he hits his agenda. He's not doing any of that stuff. Instead, he is receiving what people are saying. He is ministering to them. He is pushing back when he needs to push back. He is giving love and giving encouragement, but doing so in a way that is not hurried and is not anxious and is not troubled by the stock market. And this is written in 2022. Sayers wrote it coming out of the COVID pandemic. So a lot of it harkens to COVID. But for us, and the reason it came back up and the reason I went back through it is because stock market tumbles and tariffs and new presidents that people are freaking out about and countries that are seeming to go to war with each other forever. You know, all of the litany of things that had happened just in the first quarter of 2025 alone. And so I read it as a reminder to myself, but also as a framework for ministry for me, of how to be a non-anxious presence. And I can honestly say, like, I've taken some of these lessons and put them into practice. It's one of the reasons why certain like times in my week now are carved out to just be non-anxious presences with people. So I don't know. It's a great book. It's short. It's probably 200 pages, maybe less than 200 pages. It's nothing huge. It can be life-changing for you. You don't have to be a Christian leader. If you don't have to be a pastor or anything like that. You can just read it. Highly, highly recommended. So non-anxious presence. That's my number 4. Number
nice.
3.
Sounds good. I haven't read it, so I can't. I don't know. I can't really comment, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, that's good. What about number 3?
Sure. My number 3. So we're switching away from classics. Well, I guess you could say this is a classic in its own right, maybe, but switching into fantasy stuff. So The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time.
Yep.
So this is book 4 in the Wheel of Time series. And it's, it's not Words of Radiance, but it's, where are we at? Big. What are we at? What are we at here?
It says 1,007.
Yeah, this version is 980 pages. So, just a little bit under, but no slouch. Not just a sit down in one session type of book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very slowly reading through the Wheel of Time. I finished this one. I started reading it when the show actually first came out back in season 1 of the show. My wife and I, in theory, were both going to read it, and I don't know if she ever started, and maybe she read a couple pages of the first book. But I read the first, not to throw her under the bus, but I read the first 3 books then, and I sort of started book 4, got a little burnt out because I was trying to just like read them all back to back to back.
Yeah, dude, that's too much.
And then, so I picked it up this year anyway, and started it over and read it through and had a nice time with it. I think in terms of the overall sort of story, world, few other factors, this book in theory could be number 1 on my list. It's not number 1 because I struggle with Robert Jordan a little bit.
Really?
I am someone, when I'm reading, I don't really visualize things in the way that I think a lot of people describe visualizing things when they're reading. So like, when everything connected with Robert Jordan is like you walk into a room and then he spends 7 pages describing the room to you.
100% true.
Like I don't need any of that. Like, you can give me a paragraph and I'm good and we can move on. Like, I don't need 5 pages. I don't need a page on what someone's dress looks like. Like, I'm good. So like this, I struggle with his style of writing, and it's not that the writing is poor. Like, the writing is very good. He was an excellent, like, prose writer. You know, his descriptions are beautiful, often very well done. You know, if you really are someone who likes to visualize things, then you might love his work, because you could really get just such a clear image of every scene, every sequence, like in your mind. But that just isn't me. Like, and I've realized over time through reading that, like, while I certainly have an appreciation for character and, you know, themes and all these things, I've described some in the other books. Like, I definitely like am someone who, okay, but what happens? Like, plot, like, where is this going? What's happening? What's the next thing we're doing? And so really extended sections where very little is happening and the characters are having the same discussion 10 times over the course of 5 chapters before they make a decision is just not my preferred writing style. So I struggle a little bit with Robert Jordan because of that, because his writing, like, this book is 980 pages, the version I have. You could, for me, you could comfortably cut out 250, maybe 300 pages, and the book would be like A+. Like, this book is very good as it is. It would be like amazing if it was like 200 pages shorter, maybe more. Like, it just cut out all the times Nynaeve tugs on her braid, and that's going to give you like 30 pages.
Yep.
Tug, apparently I read something that was like, she only does that 60 times in the whole series. I'm like, there's no way that's possibly true.
I don't know.
I swear she did it 20 times in this book alone.
Yeah,
like,
there's 1,000 books, and she probably does it 1,000 times in each book.
Yeah, it's just... Anyway, he just tends to have, like, characters will have tics or internal monologue. They'll think things about themselves, but, like, again and again and again and again. And it's just like, all right, man, I get it. Perrin doesn't know how to talk to women or whatever, or he doesn't understand what women are saying. Like, you don't need to tell me 7 times in the first 5 chapters of this book. Like, I understand he doesn't get it. Like, so, but with that being said, like, the world building is awesome. I love the magic system. Like, the channeling system, I think, is so good. The characters I really like. Like, well, the male characters I really like. Perrin and Matt and...
Moraine's cool.
Moraine's okay. Perrin and Matt and Rand are all great characters. And I say that not to be like, no, female characters. Jordan really does his female characters dirty in the first few books.
He does.
Of the series. Like, because that's not me. Like, that's Jordan. Like, Nynaeve especially is an absolute nightmare in the books of a character. And I understand that, like, after book 7 or something, apparently she gets a lot better, but she's not great. Egwene's not great. Elaine is okay. She's not great. Min's okay. Moraine is okay. Like, he really does dirty by his female characters, especially early. My understanding is as the series goes on, it gets better, and there's a lot of male-female bickering, and it makes sense in the world of the book why there might be more tension between men and women than in our world, but, like, it's too much. You know, like, it feels constant. Like, every conversation between men and women, they're just jabbing at each other over, like, wool-brained idiot this, or, like, you know, women that, like, or talking about how to, like, survive with the, like, it's just too much. So anyway, I'm going on too long. So the book is very good. I have it at 3. I'm being too negative. The world building's great. I like a lot of the characters. The channeling's great. The events that happen are very cool. Like, the story that is being told is very interesting. Like, Jordan just has there's a lot of frustration for me in reading Jordan's books because it's just a writing style that is not really for me. It's just not a writing style I resonate with, but I read it because it is very well written and because I do like a lot of these elements and I want to see where they go. And this is where I mentioned Brandon Sanderson earlier when I mentioned that I hadn't read him, because in theory, eventually I'll get to the books that Brandon Sanderson wrote, which are at the end of the series. Yeah, it's going to be a bit because I'm taking my time. I finished this one. I've read a couple books since that. I didn't jump right into book 5. You know, so I just started Dungeon Crawler Carl yesterday,
dude,
which is like a lit RPG. Pretty fun.
How do you feel about it?
I think I'm gonna like it.
Yes,
I've only read like the first chapter or 2, but based on the tone so far in it, I think as long as like what happens is kind of fun or interesting, like the plot goes somewhere I like, I think I'll be into it because I love the tone. It's definitely for me. So I'm probably going to read that, and then maybe I'm going to come around to book 5, and we'll see where we go from there. So I don't mean to seem too negative. Robert Jordan was a great writer. He's awesome. But there's just, for me, there's some frustrations with his writing that I have a hard time with. So anyway, book 3, The Shadow Rising.
All right. Well, that brings it to my number 3, and this is going to be pretty simple. My number 3 is Oathbringer. Another Brandon Sanderson. Again, I don't need to dive any more into Sanderson. I will tell you that Oathbringer is a significant shift in the entire story model of the Stormlight Archive, and you can definitely tell the way he structured the Stormlight Archive. It's supposed to be 10 books. He's gotten to number 5. Number 3 is supposed to be the linchpin for the first arc, and you could definitely see why. There is a definite almost a tone shift, and it gets a little darker. He starts playing around, not darker in terms of like slasher film, darker in terms of he starts playing with like personality disorders in a way that you think is kind of like, oh, that's cute, and then it turns out to be like, oh no, this is a thing. And that actually, even up halfway through into book 4, all the way through book 4, that plagues this one character as well. The way there's a big, huge, epic battle scene that is very, very well done. I'm talking like it spans in Sanderson fashion probably 150 pages, and at no time do you get. I'll give you and this is no thing, but he usually does his chapters every 4 to 6 pages, as any good fantasy writer should, in my opinion. You don't need a chapter that's like 15 pages long, because a lot of times you're going to get lost in it. And that Robert Jordan does 26-page chapters. Yes, he does.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It bothers me. Again, that's a Jordan thing, though, because Jordan was writing those back at the early 80s, and like that was a thing. Tolkien does the same thing. Tolkien has 48-page chapters, but then he'll also have 2-page chapters. Sanderson, by and large, does the like 4 to 8-page chapters. Sometimes they're a little longer, sometimes they're shorter. Sometimes some of the interludes or whatever. But during this battle, he intentionally, it's like one chapter for this battle. And so I'm talking like maybe 50 or 60 pages of a chapter. But he does the breaks. And so it's like maybe half a page break, half a page break, half a page, and like character break. And so you feel like you're in a movie. And I very rarely feel that when I'm reading a book. But I even going back through the battle scene and at the end of Oathbringer, towards the end of Oathbringer, I was like, man, this is good. Like, this is legitimately good fantasy writing. So I don't know, highly recommend Oathbringer. One thing I will say is you can see on the page here, there's these pictures. These pictures might seem like, oh, those are just cute pictures. They actually serve a purpose to the entire story, which is fascinating. Like some of this Fabrial collection here, this actually has stuff to do with the actual Cosmere, which is just like, dude's got a lot of time and probably smokes a whole lot of weed and like just has like a lot of time to just think big high brain fantasy stuff. So there we go. That's my number 3. What about for you, number 2?
Good. So my number 2 is sadly the only one I don't actually have a physical copy of the book to show. That's okay. I tried to grab all 5, but it is Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne.
Yes, dude.
So this is, I've read 2 series by John Gwynne. One is called The Faithful and the Fallen, which is a solid series. I don't mind it. It tends to get more attention than this one, which I don't really understand. Although this one did just end. So Hunger of the Gods is the second book in the series. The first one is called Shadow of the Gods. This then Hunger, and then the third one is called Fury of the Gods, and it came out in October, I believe, of last year. And I didn't pick the final one because I do think it feels a little rushed in places at the end, but I would absolutely still recommend the entire series. And this is fantasy that's probably more my style. Like I just said, I do like Robert Jordan, but his writing style is maybe not my preference. Hunger of the Gods, John Gwynne, has a style that is much more, I would say, to my preference, where things are moving, things are happening, like. And it's not that like character is sacrificed. Like the characters are very good. I think there's lots of growth and interesting things going on with the characters in his books. He's exceptionally good at describing small scale battle or fight scenes. I'll say some of, like, if he gets into larger battle stuff, it gets a little muddy, but his like one-on-one or like a couple against a couple fight scenes are exceptionally well done. Really well described, very detailed with his description of action in a way that I really enjoyed. This series is like a Viking style series, so it's like it leans heavily on, it's not our world, so it's not like our Viking mythology, but it borrows some things from it. The equipment is very Viking, it's very well described, and he's a reenactor of some kind, Viking reenactor. So
yeah,
that makes sense that he's well versed in the equipment. So it's really excellent. The books move. I think they're ones that I think you pick up, and they definitely are page turners to me. I really like the action. You only follow a couple characters. Like, the world building, I think, is really excellent. And in each book, you only follow, I think, no more than like 4 characters.
Oh, wow.
Or 4 or 5 characters in a book. So it's pretty streamlined. The first book, I believe, is only 3 characters that you follow. So the first one is called Shadow of the Gods. I just think the second one is the strongest one in the series, but I would recommend the whole series. And his first series, Faithful and the Fallen with Malice, and that is also pretty good. I would recommend it, but I just think he improved on some things with the Bloodsworn saga, which is the trilogy that just ended. So yeah, highly recommend. Great action if you're into like a sort of Viking kind of setting. A fairly gritty, I'm not going to call it like grimdark or anything, I don't really think it's that, but you know, feels pretty lived in world. I think the character arcs are really good. The characters feel pretty real to me. Love the action, and they're just fast paced, and these are ones like you can just pick up, you read a couple chapters, you're probably going to want to read more, but they just move, and I think they're a really great time. So yeah, highly recommend John Gwynne generally, but specifically for me, this trilogy.
So you have talked about him actually back in our last season of the Roundtable. You talked about Faithful and the Fallen and Ruin and Wrath and all that. And so he's been on my list, and I've just never gotten there. I'm assuming this dragon has something to do with the whole thing.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting world, and this is a world, I don't want to give away spoilers, but this is a world where the gods were sort of real, like lived, like they were physical beings within the world. And there, at one point, there was I guess, like pseudo sort of Ragnarok type of event, like a sort of, they call it the Gods' Fall, where the gods fought and most of them died. So then it's about sort of some things that happen, you know, potentially maybe a couple of them come back to life. You know, I don't want to get into like spoilers of it, but it's an interesting story in terms of what happens and the direction it goes, and the sort of relationships between people and characters and their relationship to the gods and like that sort of thing. And so it's a very interesting sort of fantasy world to me. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's definitely kind of my vibe.
Love it. All right. Well, you had brought him up, and I didn't want to say anything, but my number 2 is this Inevitable Ruin by one Matt Dinniman. It's book 7 of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I had started DCC last year, and I think I was waxing lyrical about DCC last year on one of our roundtable things. I don't know if you remember that. But so I plowed through all 7. There's only 7 so far. Matt Dinniman is an interesting dude. I think he plays bass or guitar in like a punk band in like the Pacific Northwest. He doesn't have a plan for his books. He said he sits down and he just kind of goes, and it's just like, you could very much tell it's like an improv musician.
It's like the anti-Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, he has, and maybe that's why I like this so much, is because it very much is like the anti-Sanderson of we're just gonna go, and I'm not gonna give any spoilers because there is some stuff that could be spoiled, and so I'm not gonna spoil it. This Inevitable Ruin is there's a couple of cool things that happen in particularly book 4 and book 6. Book 7 follows them up. There's cool things that happen in all of this. you kind of get used to the world, because like a lit RPG, if you don't know what a lit RPG, that's not like, yo, it's lit. A lit RPG is very much like it's RPG mechanics. So like think about, you're getting dropped into Baldur's Gate, and they make a play on like you're getting dropped into Baldur's Gate, and you have stats, and you have magic, and you have things that are happening.
It's gonna happen when he jumped up and I put him down and he went to jump up again. I'm like, he's gonna hit the button.
We're back recording after a fun little piece of feline shenaniganry. Which cat is it that turned your computer off?
Pumpkin. He would have been briefly seen on camera when he came back around to try to visit me again and jumped up on my tower and turned it off. So
he was just missing you, dude. That's all. It's okay. It happens.
Yeah, he didn't mean it.
It's cats. This is how they work. Anyway, Dungeon Crawl Carl. I don't know what I was saying other than book 7 is a lot of fun. There's a lot of things that Dinniman plays with in the literary RPG thing, and there's a couple other authors out there that are doing it. I can see how you're pigeonholing yourself if you're doing this type of genre, and in fact I can see how it would get quite old writing in this style. Excuse me. I don't want to say he gets away from it, because there's like an underpinning of this is still a very deadly game, but very soon into the series he starts to move into, there's almost like a meta story that's happening. And in book 7, the meta story kind of comes to a head. Actually, in book 6 and parts of book 4, it comes to a head. But really, in book 7, there's like the entire thing is, I don't know. You're going to blow through these. If you're going to keep on them, you're going to blow through these. And I'd be interested to know what you would think about after book 1, if you're going to stick with it. Because if you do, you're hooked. If you don't, then like it's not for you. Like it's that sounded very snobby. Oh, it's not for you. I don't mean it that way. It's just, this is not for you. Because the genre it's weird. It's a weird way of writing, and it's kind of vulgar, and it's kind of vulgar in like a very, hey, I know what I'm doing type of way. And I'll just give this one little thing, and then this is it. In one of the main clubs that they go into that are like safe house rest houses, I'm not going to give away the names of them, but there's some strippers, male strippers that are there, and one of them is named Dong Quixote, which I think is very, very clever. Dong Quixote. It's very good. It's very, very good. He knows exactly what he's doing. So anyway, This Inevitable Ruin, get there. It's very good. It's very, very good. I like Matt Dinniman.
All right. Nice.
What's your number 1 here, pal?
Sure, my number 1. Back to the physical books.
Yes.
I got Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames.
Yeah.
This book is super fun. It's like, it just, a little bit of connection to Dungeon Crawler Carl, not as comedic of a tone.
No.
But very sarcastic. The perspective of our main character, Clay, is quite funny. He's got a great number of great one-liners and sort of his internal monologue I find endlessly entertaining. It's not a particularly like dark and serious story. Like, it's pretty light. It's a world that's very heavily influenced by music. Like, the author put in an enormous amount of like classic rock references into it. And the concept of the idea, or the concept of the story, is that, or the premise is that there are mercenary groups in this world, and they're called bands, like a band of mercenaries. But it's literally talked about like they're bands, like almost like they're musicians, like they're like rock stars. And so the idea of the book is we're getting the band back together, like literally. And so it's the whole story is about like these guys who are like maybe 10 years, just like 15 years too old to be doing this. And like, we're going again, like something happens, this situation comes up, and one of the members comes to Clay in like chapter 1 right away. It's like, we got to get the band back together because there's something they have to go do. And the story is pretty on rails. Like, it's a pretty linear kind of story progression. It's very D&D inspired, I would say, but it's just fun. Like, it's just a funny, again, the internal monologue, like sarcastic tone. I absolutely love it. And it's just, we have to go here. We got to go get this member of the band. And then, okay, we got to do this thing. But to get them, we're going to have to do this thing for this other person. And it's like, it's such a D&D type of one thing after another premise, but it's so well executed. The action is really good. I love the characters. The dynamics are great. It's just such a fun ride. And it's not particularly long. I mean, there it says 422. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It might be this one. I think this one's a little bit longer. It's like 500, little bit less than 493, 492. But it reads really fast. It's a page turner. And I think it's just a super fun premise that's extremely well executed. And I love the tone. Like, if there's an opportunity to read like a chapter or two before you buy it, just do that. And if you like the tone, then just read the rest of it, because you're probably going to like the rest of it. If you don't like this,
right here, Joe Abercrombie meets Terry Pratchett. I'm
Sure.
sold. I'm freaking sold.
Sure. I have not read either of those authors, so or I've probably read something by Pratchett.
You've read. I thought you read Abercrombie. I thought you and I talked about. Crap, what was that book called? You keep going.
I've never read Abercrombie. The Blade itself. I read like a chapter of the Blade itself. I never got any farther.
Maybe that's what it was.
I started it and I just never finished. Like, I just. Not because of any bad thing. I read a couple pages or maybe the first chapter, and then I just got sidetracked with something. But yeah, it's a little dark, but the world isn't like crazy. The premise, like what's going on in the thing they're trying to overcome, is pretty daunting. And there's definitely some like kind of gore, like violence, like is pretty intense, but nothing else really content wise that would be a concern. I don't think. It's just super fun. I had such a good time with it. The tone is a little divisive. So again, if you can like read a sample, read the sample, and if you like the tone that's in that sample, then I would say check it out, because it will give you an idea immediately of whether you're going to be into it or not.
I am putting it on my to read.
It's supposed to be it's supposed to be a trilogy. The sequel is not as good in my opinion. It has a little bit of crossover. It's like some characters who are kind of connected to the characters in this story, and a couple characters from this story do appear in the second one. But if this one is like, I don't know, I mean, I love this one. So for me, it's like, if it's on a tier list, this one's like an S. The second one is like a B. It's good. It's like solid, but to me, it's kind of a step down in most ways. And it's very character driven. It's very character and plot driven. So like, there's not a lot of depth in terms of theme. Like there's some nice stuff about family and whatever, but like very character and plot driven, so, and tone driven. So, and the second book to me is not as interesting in that regard, but if you like it, I would maybe recommend checking it out, but definitely read this one, and you can absolutely read it as a one-off. It's nothing is left hanging that you have to go and read the second one. So.
Okay. That is good to know. I put it on my I've got this Apple Note here with just like an insane amount of things that need to be read and watched, and just keeps growing. But this one just got added to the list, so we'll get there when we get there. All right. Anything else? That's a good list, dude. That's a real fun list. Anything you want to add to that before I jump in and squash the list here?
No, I'm good. I think I said everything.
All right. So my number one is another nonfiction book. Again, me as pastor, I'm kind of boring. It's called The Genealogical Adam and Eve. We were talking about this in our server as well. So it's by this guy, Joseph Swamidass. S. Joshua Swamidass. Sorry, forgot the S there, Mr. Swamidass. Professor. So the premise behind this, it's a nonfiction book. It is about the book of Genesis, but it's about the idea of universal ancestry and how the Bible posits that all humanity was descended from one man and one woman. And it and it pushes back on the notion that Adam and Eve were the first two humans that were actually created. And Swamidass he's a Christian, and so he argues it from, but he's also a biological he's a geneticist / something. I don't know. He works with genetics, hardcore genetics, and he's very well versed. He's very well respected, and this is one of his seminal works, and it is fascinating. The lengths to which he goes to prove two things. Number one, universal ancestry, meaning that we are all related, not just that we share human genes, but that we are actually all related to the same two people. And so he shows his work there, which is fascinating. But two, that there probably were humans or humanoid figures outside of the Garden of Eden when God actually created Adam and Eve, or at least breathed life, humanity, will, being, and thought into Adam and Eve. And I grew up Christian, walked away from Christianity, big time walked away from it, did a whole bunch of drugs, did a whole bunch of everything, came back to Christianity when in my later years after I had gone and lived a wild life, and realized that a lot of the things that I had grown up with, particularly young earth creation, meaning that the earth is only 7,000 years old, which it may or may not be. I'm not actually sure about that. There are proofs for both sides, but also the idea that Adam and Eve are the first two humans on earth, and maybe humans is a stretch when you look at it, but the idea then that there were humanoid-like figures outside of the Garden of Eden was anathema when you're growing up. Like, we don't believe in Neanderthals and we don't believe in all that other stuff. We're Bible-believing Christians. And that's just, that goes against a lot of what science has found. And science does not contradict faith. Science fulfills faith in a way that faith needs to understand, and science also needs to understand. There needs to be a meeting of the minds there. And I read this book about once a year, and have read this book about once a year for the last 3 or 4 years, because it changed the way I do ministry. It changed the way I look as a pastor. It changed a lot of things for me in a way that was ultimately beneficial, and opened me up to, oh yeah, by the way, there is not a battle between science and faith. So highly recommend this book. I mean, it's engaging. It's a little heady for some of it. But the way he actually breaks down genetics and genomes, and how genetic traits can carry up to 50 generations away, and how it's fascinating. And the biggest thing, of course, is that he posits that Adam and Eve, while they were the first reasoning human beings, that there had to be, for all of this to work, there had to be beings outside of the garden that were able to carry the Spirit of God and carry the will of God after Adam and Eve. So I don't know. It's a fascinating book. Highly recommend it.
Sure, similar tones are number one. So
yeah, close. Yours, I mean, it's a very go here, do this type of genetics
sure.
book.
I mean, mine's maybe a little more serious, a little more thoughtful. But I don't know. It's not. We don't need to get into the nitty gritty of it. It's okay.
No. I will forever bow down to your number one. I think, of course,
as you should.
Yeah, I think it trumps all of the other things. No, I guess I've never asked you. Is this something that would strike your fancy, or is this one of those I'm good?
It's one of those things that sounds interesting. Like, the concept is interesting to me. Would I actually sit down and read the book? Probably not. I don't know. I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I mean, obviously I did read a lot at some point. Like when I was in university, I read a lot of history of various things. So it certainly could. And maybe at some point I'll turn more into some nonfiction stuff. I've thought about making that shift, but I'm enjoying the fiction stuff I'm reading for the most part. This comparison just reminds me of a while ago in the book section of our Discord, discord.gg/Lux Digital Church.
It's in the doodly-doos below.
There we go. Someone was sharing a very intense sharing a book, something along this line of like maybe even more like sort of spirit focused, like about how they were moved and the impact it had on them and all these things, sharing all this stuff. And I just like, I'm reading a book about a wizard detective.
I put on my robe and wizard hat.
Yeah, because I was reading the Dresden Files at the time, and so it just strikes me as a similar kind of difference between
it's so good
in terms of tones. But hey, we can't say we don't cover. No one can say we don't cover all our bases here. We got a little something for everybody. So
Templar,
hey, you want classics, we got you. You want some fun fantasy stuff, we got you. You want some genealogical genetic study of history, we got you covered. So
in service last night, by the way, we're part of a digital church called Lux Digital Church, again in the doodly-doos below. In service last night, you said something that had me rolling, and I can't remember what it was, but it was like a deeply spiritual moment, and you just came in like just bull in a china shop, like, yep. Like it was essentially like, yep, Jesus was wrapped in a sheet or something like that, just something like inane like that, and I was like, my guy.
Yeah, well, Mark and Jen were talking about him. Shout out Pastor Mark.
Shout out Pastor Mark.
Try to throw him under the bus, but he self-admitted on Twitch that when he was single, he rarely ever changed his sheets, and so he got into this whole. There's always a question of the day whenever we have our services Wednesday at 8:30 on Twitch, twitch.tv/Lux Digital Church. So, and there's always a question of the day for the service. The question was, how often do you change your sheets? And so Mark admitted that he rarely, if ever, did that. People made the sort of point that we've been talking about this for a long time. It's not really related to Easter at all. And I said that the Shroud of Turin was like a sheet. There's like a sheet that was like the Shroud of Turin. So there's a connection there if you want there to be a connection. It's sort of loosely connected. So I just pointed that out. That's all.
Oh, so good. I laughed so loud.
Services are fun. By all means, come and check them out. So,
yes, hey. I laughed so loud. Hey, this was fun. I know this is longer than a normal Roundtable episode. Anything before we wrap up on this this here edition of our top fives? I'm sure we'll have another top five at some point. We're kicking around Templar doing a tier list of books he's read as well, and me kind of being a passenger on some of that. Although I've read a decent amount of his, he's going in directions that are like I hadn't heard of three of these, but two of these books at least. I've heard of the authors, I've just not heard of the book. So I'd be fascinated to let you kind of guide a conversation here and try to sell me on your S tier and what is your butt tiers. That'd be fun. I'd be down with that.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Until then, for Templar 10, I'm chinomage. We'll see you next episode. By the way, you can vote on the bracket for just a couple more days. Next episode, we're going to be breaking down round 2 in our best video game franchises of all time bracket. You can vote in the doodly-doos below. That thing is closing up in a couple of days, so just be ready to go. Until then, for Templar 10, this is chinomage. We love you. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.